There is a kind of discipline that makes people uncomfortable, not because it is loud, not because it demands attention, but because it is consistent. A person who appears at the same time every day. A person who does not need to be convinced. A person who does not negotiate with their mood. A person who continues when nobody is watching. This kind of person becomes difficult to understand. Others begin to ask questions. How do they keep going? Why do they not lose interest? Why do they not need motivation? Why do they continue when the excitement disappears? The answer is not greater enthusiasm. The answer is not superior genetics. The answer is not some hidden reserve of willpower. The answer is far more dangerous. They have removed the need to decide. And when a human being removes unnecessary decisions from their life, something changes. The mind becomes quieter. The behavior becomes automatic. And the former identity begins to disappear. In ancient Japan, the warrior understood something modern people have forgotten. The battle is rarely won in the moment of crisis. The battle is won before the crisis arrives. The decision is made before fear appears. The path is chosen before confusion begins. The action is rehearsed until hesitation becomes unnatural. This is the principle we are going to explore. A system built on continuity. A system built on removing choice. A system built on repetition, so precise that discipline no longer feels like an act of resistance. It becomes your nature. But before that transformation can occur, something must die. The version of you that constantly asks, "Do I feel like doing this today?" That version cannot survive. Imagine a man named Kenji. Every Monday, he begins again. A new schedule. A new notebook. A new routine. A new promise. He wakes early for 3 days. Then he misses one morning. One missed morning becomes 2. 2 becomes a week. Then the process begins again. He studies productivity. He watches videos about discipline. He reads about ancient warriors. He creates elaborate systems. But his life remains unchanged. Why? Because Kenji believes consistency is a matter of motivation. He believes the correct emotion must arrive before the correct action. He waits to feel ready. He waits to feel inspired. He waits to feel powerful. And this is the first illusion. The belief that action must begin with the right feeling. But a river does not wait to feel motivated before moving. A machine does not ask whether it is in the mood to operate. A warrior does not wait for courage before following a command already given. Kenji is not weak because he lacks information. He is trapped because every day he reopens the same negotiation. Should I work today? Should I exercise? Should I study? Should I continue? Every question creates a battlefield. And most people lose before the battle begins. Motivation is temporary energy. Discipline is structural design. Motivation rises. Motivation falls. Motivation is affected by sleep, stress, emotion, weather, failure, praise, and fear. If your entire life depends on motivation, then your life is controlled by conditions. And conditions are unstable. The ancient warrior did not build his entire life around how he felt. He built rituals. The action came first. The emotion followed. This distinction is critical. You do not need to feel disciplined to act with discipline. You act with discipline. Then, slowly, the identity of a disciplined person begins to form. Neuroscience supports a simple truth. Repeated behaviors become more automatic as the brain reinforces the pathways associated with them. The brain learns through repetition, not through intention alone, not through desire, through repeated execution. The river becomes deep because water passes through the same path again and again. The mind is similar. Every repetition is a vote. Every repetition strengthens a pathway. Every repetition tells the brain, this is what we do. Therefore, stop asking, how do I become motivated? Ask, how do I make the action inevitable? That is a different question. A more serious question. Most people believe freedom means having endless choices. But endless choices create endless escape routes. Should I work in the morning? Perhaps in the afternoon. Perhaps at night. Should I study for 1 hour? Maybe 30 minutes. Should I exercise today? Perhaps tomorrow. This appears to be freedom. But psychologically, it becomes fragmentation. The mind remains in negotiation. A Zen-inspired discipline system removes unnecessary choice. The time is fixed. The action is fixed. The response is fixed. The decision is made before the emotion arrives. This is the principle of predecision. You decide in advance. At 6:00 I train. At 8:00 I study. At 10:00 I write. Not if I feel like it. Not if the conditions are perfect. Not if the day is easy. The time arrives. The action begins. The mind is not asked for permission. This is how discipline becomes automation. A train does not debate its destination every kilometer. A choreography does not reinvent every movement during the performance. A warrior does not stop in the middle of battle to redesign his stance. The sequence has already been decided. And because it has been decided, hesitation loses its authority. Modern people are addicted to novelty. New routines. New techniques. New apps. New methods. New strategies. They change the system every time the system becomes boring. But boredom is not always a signal to stop. Sometimes boredom is the doorway to mastery. The samurai did not practice a sword technique once and then demand constant novelty. The movement was repeated. Again, 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 until the body no longer needed conscious instruction. This is the difference between entertainment and mastery. Entertainment demands constant change. Mastery demands depth. The same action, performed repeatedly, becomes more precise. The same time creates a stronger trigger. The same environment begins to signal the brain. Now we begin. This is why fixed routines are powerful. The location becomes associated with the action. The time becomes associated with the action. The sequence becomes associated with the action. Eventually, the beginning itself becomes automatic. You do not need to convince yourself. The ritual starts. And once the ritual starts, resistance has already lost part of the battle. Now consider the illusion of perfection. Kenji misses one day. Then he says, I have failed. This is the psychology of perfection. One mistake becomes an identity crisis. One missed workout becomes, I am inconsistent. One missed study session becomes, I can never maintain discipline. But this is another illusion. The goal is not perfection. The goal is continuity. The goal is to return. A river may encounter a stone. It does not conclude that the journey is over. It changes direction. It continues. This is why the system must contain one rule. Practice without gaps. Not perfect performance. Practice without gaps. There will be days when the action is weak. There will be days when the performance is incomplete. There will be days when you are tired. But the chain must not disappear. Because the most dangerous event is not a bad session. The most dangerous event is complete disappearance. Once disappearance becomes acceptable, the identity begins to weaken. Therefore, on difficult days, reduce the scale if necessary. But do not abandon the identity. 10 minutes. 1 page. 1 repetition. One deliberate action. The message must remain. I am still the person who returns. I am still in the system. I am still moving. Continuity over perfection. Continuity over perfection. Continuity over perfection. Willpower is useful, but it is an unreliable foundation. The more decisions you make, the more opportunities you create for resistance. This is why the strongest systems do not depend entirely on heroic effort. They depend on architecture. The environment is arranged. The time is fixed. The action is predetermined. The response to difficulty is already decided. This is where predecided responses become powerful. Before the difficult moment arrives, you decide what will happen. If I feel tired, I will begin for 5 minutes. If I miss the morning, I will complete the action in the evening. If I feel resistance, I will not debate the resistance. If I fail, I will return at the next scheduled opportunity. No emotional negotiation. No courtroom inside the mind. The decision has already been made. This is how a system protects you from your temporary self. Because your temporary self is not always trustworthy. Your future self needs protection from your present emotions. So you create rules. Not because you are weak, because you understand the mind. A warrior does not enter battle and hope his weapon appears when needed. He prepares before the battle. Your rules are your weapons. Your schedule is your battlefield. Your repeated action is your training. And your old identity is the opponent. Now assemble the system. Begin with a public declaration. Not for attention. Not for praise. For psychological pressure. When you publicly state a serious commitment, the mind begins to confront a new identity. You are no longer merely thinking about becoming disciplined. You have declared an intention. The declaration creates a line. Before the line. After the line. You have told the world, this is what I am now practicing. And the mind begins to notice when your behavior contradicts the declaration. Then choose a fixed time. Protect it. Do not constantly renegotiate it. A fixed time reduces decision-making. The body begins to anticipate. The mind begins to prepare. The ritual becomes anchored. A clock becomes a command. Then choose a fixed action. Do not create an endless menu. Choose the essential action. One study block. One training session. One writing session. One period of meditation. The action must be clear enough that the mind cannot hide inside confusion. Vague goals create vague behavior. Clear actions create movement. Then practice without gaps. Do not worship perfection. Protect continuity. The objective is to remain connected to the identity. The chain may become shorter. The pace may become slower. But the practice remains alive. Finally, decide your responses before difficulty. If this happens, then I do this. No debate. No negotiation. No emotional trial. This is the foundation of automatic discipline. Now comes the part most people avoid. You cannot become a new person while constantly protecting the old one. The old identity wants flexibility. It wants excuses. It wants endless research. It wants the freedom to begin again tomorrow. It wants to keep every option open. But transformation requires the closing of certain doors. At some point, you must stop saying, I am trying to become disciplined, and begin saying, I am a person who does what has been decided. The difference is not linguistic. It is existential. One identity is attempting. The other identity is operating. One asks for permission. The other follows the system. One is waiting to become. The other has already begun. This is identity death. Not physical death. The death of the pattern that has governed you. The death of the person who repeatedly promises and repeatedly retreats. The death of the person who needs the perfect day. The death of the person who constantly searches for a better method instead of repeating the current one. And what replaces that identity? Not a louder person, not a more emotional person, a quieter person, a more precise person, a person who does not need to announce every action, a person whose behavior has become evidence. The transformation is not dramatic. That is why most people miss it. One day, you simply notice that you no longer negotiate with the same things. The distraction appears. You return. The discomfort appears. You continue. The mood disappears. You act anyway. The old temptation returns. But the old response is gone. You have become unfamiliar to yourself. This is the true beginning. If you are serious, make a public declaration now. Subscribe to this channel. Not as a passive gesture, as a psychological commitment. And comment below. I will not negotiate with what I have already decided. Write it deliberately. Not because a comment will magically transform your life. It will not. The transformation comes from what happens after the declaration. The comment is only the line. The system begins when you live according to it. Choose one action. Choose one fixed time. Choose your response to resistance. Then repeat. Again. 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 Do not search for constant excitement. Do not search for a perfect routine. Do not keep rebuilding the machine. Build it once. Then operate it. The world is filled with people who begin. Very few continue. Fewer still continue without needing to be seen. And almost none continue long enough to become unrecognizable to their former selves. You are not required to become extraordinary today. You are required to become consistent enough that your former identity can no longer survive. The old version of you will resist. Let it. The old habits will return. Let them knock. You do not need to destroy every thought. You do not need to win every emotional battle. You only need to return to the path. The time arrives. The action begins. The decision has already been made. No negotiation. No retreat. No return to the person you were. Because once you have seen the mechanism clearly, ignorance is no longer available. You now understand the system. And understanding creates responsibility. So begin quietly. Choose the hour. Choose the action. Make the declaration. Then repeat. Tomorrow. And the day after. And the day after that. Until discipline is no longer something you perform. Until consistency is no longer something you admire. Until the person who once needed motivation becomes a stranger. And one day, without announcement, without applause, without permission from anyone, you will realize something. You are no longer normal. You no longer live by impulse. You no longer depend on mood. You no longer require the world to make things easy before you move. The system is running. The river is moving. The machine is operating. And the person you used to be has no authority here anymore. Begin. And do not return.